The story that follows is based on a real event. At the 1976 German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring, the movie begins. James Hunt and Niki Lauda have long been viewed as rivals, though he is unsure of why. Niki Lauda says as he raises his gaze to the heavens that he doesn't understand why. The two of them and the other competitors take off around the track as the race begins. 6 years ago, James Hunt enters a hospital while sporting a grimy clothing and a bloody nose. Everyone is in a state of shock when he announces himself. Gemma, a sweet nurse, cares for him. She attends to a crowbar-inflicted cut on his abdomen that was caused by another man. They had a fight with the man's wife, he says to Gemma. He only reveals what she wanted him to when she asks what he done, and he offers to show Gemma. Cut to them having multiple sexual encounters at home. When James needs to meet his team for a Formula 3 race, he drives Gemma to the Crystal Palace circuit. Gemma is worried when Johnny starts throwing up, but she is reassured that he does this before every race. James then notices Niki Lauda approaching for the first time. Niki and James start the race, with James coming out on front until Niki flips out and his motor overheats. Niki confronts James afterwards and calls him an asshole, but James and his friends laugh him off. Niki reveals that he comes from a political and economics background. In order to join a Formula 1 racing team, he approaches his father for a loan, but he declines. Niki uses a loan he personally obtains from the bank to pay for his entrance. He has his own car built as quickly as he thinks it ought to be, and he has racer Clay Regazzoni demonstrate how much faster it is than the team's earlier vehicle. In exchange for a position on the team and a 2-year contract despite being a rookie, Niki persuades boss Lewis Stanley to let him enter with his own automobile. Later, Regazzoni runs into Niki and informs him that he saw him conversing with the attractive track manager. He tells her that her previous partner was an eternal fucker who was also mad and a racer. James was there. James receives a brand new race car from Hesketh Racing, which he adores. Now that they are driving for Formula 1, he drives it to Watkins Glen. There is an accident, which makes James anxious and ultimately causes him to vomit. When he encounters a model by the name of Susie Miller in the Hesketh garage, he starts to see himself racing. The two get married quickly after meeting. James learns that Niki is going to drive for Ferrari after the wedding. Niki is spotted behind the wheel of a Ferrari and calls it a piece of junk. Later, he makes a formal commitment to the group. Following that, Regazzoni drives Niki to a party while Niki remains outside. He notices a stunning woman leaving the area. Marlene Naus is her name. She agrees to take him along after he requests a ride. Up until the car breaks down in the middle of the road, he criticizes the automobile and her driving while they are traveling. When two Italian men observe Niki, Marlene is able to convince them to stop. Although Marlene is unaware of Niki's identity, she persuades him to drive quickly for her. He does this, delighting her and the other two men as he races down the road. The 1975 Formula 1 racing season is run, and Niki takes home the world title. James converses with Niki later on at a party, and Niki believes that all of James' flash and showboating is for nothing. This increases James' motivation to get ready for the championship the following year so he can defeat Niki. When James arrives at the Hesketh Racing garage, he discovers that it is closed due to a missed sponsor deadline. James smokes and drinks away his grief before becoming enraged and attacking Susie. He later meets with the McLaren Racing Team's executives and is successful in getting a job there. Season 1976 gets underway. James comes in second to Niki in South Africa and Brazil. James wins the race in Spain but is disqualified because his car's back is found to be too broad. More triumphs for Niki in Monaco and Belgium. James finds out that Susie is having an affair with actor Richard Burton, which makes things worse. They decide to get a divorce after seeing her one last time at a bar. He makes fun of the divorce as being his simplest victory when he goes outside to meet the media. Later, James' ban is lifted and his vehicle is modified to meet the requirements. Niki and Marlene exchange vows in a private ceremony, then travel to Spain for their honeymoon. After enjoying himself in the pool that day, Niki informs Marlene that his newfound happiness has turned into an enemy because he now feels as like he has something to lose. An accident occurs during practice for the German Grand Prix, severely breaking a racer's leg. Niki calls a meeting of the competitors and race authorities and announces that the race should be postponed due to the inclement weather. The others are then led by James to believe that Niki is acting in this way in order to keep up his standing in the race, while another competitor says that Niki is afraid. Niki acknowledges his fear since the rain makes it more likely that he will perish outside, but he also knows that everyone else feels the same way. Despite the fact that some participants voted to cancel the race, the majority decides that it should proceed as scheduled. James and Nikki both have rain tires on for the whole of the race, but they are both obliged to switch them out at the pit stop because the track quickly dries out. Nikki's car breaks a suspension arm on the third lap, sending him flying off the track and into a wall, whereupon the vehicle catches fire. Nikki is struck by two further vehicles, and as he catches fire, numerous racers rush to save him. 6 physicians and 34 nurses care for him in the hospital where he is brought, and it is revealed that his condition is worse than first thought. Over the radio, Marlene learns of this information. Nikki makes a full recovery in the hospital over the course of 6 weeks despite having third-degree burns on his face and toxic gases in his lungs. His top of his skull is deformed, and his lungs have been vacuumed out. He stays the entire time, watching James race and rack up more points. Nikki tries to put his helmet back on when he is able to get up, but it hurts because of the burns on his face. Marlene begs him to stop, but he responds that she should let him continue if she loves him. In the racecourse, Nikki reappears. James greets him and claims that he attempted to send him a letter while he was in the hospital and that he is sorry for what transpired. After seeing him race on television, Nikki responds that James is also to blame for putting him back behind the wheel. Nikki responds to inquiries about his rehabilitation and wants to go on racing during a press conference. How did his wife feel when she saw his face? One reporter inquires. Nikki responds that she advised him to use his right foot instead of his face to operate a vehicle. Nikki responds, "Fuck you," to the reporter's subsequent question about whether he believes his marriage will suffer as a result of his disfigurement. After the press conference, James approaches the reporter and repeatedly hits him in the face for the inquiry before admonishing him, "Ask your wife how you look when you get home, prick." It rains more heavily in Japan than it does in Germany for the final race at the Japanese Grand Prix. James and Nikki recognize one another before the race begins by waving and nodding to one another. As the race progresses, Nikki pulls ahead of James, but James starts to consider Marlene. To avoid endangering his life once more, he withdraws from the race and rejoins his wife. James keeps racing in the challenging conditions, but when the rubber on his tires begins to wear out, he is compelled to make a late pit stop. The scoreboard displays his 5th place finish as he completes the last lap, indicating that he did not win the title. He reportedly came in 3rd place, which gave him the victory. Nikki and Marlene board a chopper and fly away as he celebrates his victory. He replies that he is okay when she asks if he is because he has no regrets. James keeps up his playboy lifestyle and product endorsements after winning. He visits an airfield in Bologna, Italy, in search of Nikki, who has started flying airplanes. It was inexcusable for James to take all those risks, and Nikki seems to imply that he would have won if he had continued the race. Nikki informs James that his discovery of an enemy was a significant accomplishment before he departs. James grinned before following his pals back. A small clip of the actual James Hunt and Niki Lauda appears towards the end of the movie. James retired 2 years after that, according to Nikki's second narrator. James was one of the few people Nikki admired and was still the only person he envied when he passed away at age 45 from a heart attack. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe for other recaps.